Let's discuss the state of the polling industry with former Chief of Staff to Vice President Mike Pence, Marc Short, senior political contributor Rob Astorino, and founder of Zoose Political Index, Patrick Allocco. Marc, I got to start with you here. That does sound like it should be illegal. Obviously, it would have a downstream effect. We laugh about it now that their polling project is over. But what if it hadn't been discovered?
Well, yeah, you're right. We can laugh at it and sort of say it's absurd, but there is responsibility from professional media to understand who they're getting polling information from and to verify, some level of credibility. And the challenge of where it actually can become even more nefarious is, as you talked about in Wisconsin and Francesca Hung, they had it at 23 points and it was widely reported. Well, that could be a voter suppression technique for opponents. It could say, well, look, if she's got this one, then why am I going to go out and vote? And that race was very narrow, as you know. And so it can be laughable on the one hand, but it also can have really serious consequences.
Serious.
Yeah.
Patrick, I want to ask you, polling was designed to be maybe not so much predictive, but to give a snapshot. Where are we? Where are things going? Who's responding to what? Has polling become weaponized?
Well, that's certainly the first thing I thought of when I read about this article. But I mean, the answer to your question is yes, because you have dark money that are supporting organizations that are creating polls that are disseminating them. And those polls can affect not only the electorate and how they perceive it, because these polls are being repeated through polling aggregates and then by the campaigns themselves, but it's also affecting the betting markets as well and how people are responding there. We use Polygram and Kalshi regularly right now to get snapshots of races, and we're finding that they're greatly flawed as well.
Rob, do you think this is we're going to get to a point where Americans just don't trust polls anymore? Not just because obviously of this fake poll that we told you about, but also because the numbers are just being way, way, way off what the reality is. And obviously, I think most polls, especially those being maybe done by not reputable sources, they can kind of be designed and skewed to reveal whatever results that the pollster wants if they do have an agenda.
Yeah, look, internal polls can be skewed, so you can take it to a donor and say, hey, look, I got a chance to win. Give me a lot of money. Polls can be leaked to create headlines. Look at the Seltzer poll in Iowa in 2024, right? About a week before. Big headlines, huge news stories, lots of money going in the last week. Kamala Harris beating Donald Trump by 3. It was completely inaccurate, and Trump won by, I think, 13 points. That's a 16-point swing in that stupid poll. How many of these polls are wrong and way off? Part of it, too, is depending on, they're just inaccurate in what they predict will be the sample, and, I mean, who's coming out, and, how you deal with that also affects polling as well as questions. So if it were me, I would have no polls public, because I think it totally has affected our politics and how people vote today.
That's an interesting point. Marc, how do you deal with it? From the perspective of an elected official having to run the government, you've had this experience, and polling is coming at you every day. Do you think that now this is the time for politicians and leaders to turn around and say, we're not going to base our policy on the polling because you can't trust it?
Well, they shouldn't in the first place, Bill. So
right.
yeah, I would agree with that. But
unfortunately, I think a lot of them do. That's
absolutely.
the problem, right?
There's no doubt.
Yeah.
The vast majority of them do. You're exactly right. I think the reality is you have to get multiple source information. You can't rely upon any one poll, or else I think you are going to be sort of whimsical in what your positions are. But look, I think that unfortunately too many of our elected leaders today are just simply following these polls, and it's important that you get multiple data sets. I think it's harder in a primary cycle as well because there's more variance. You don't know exactly what turnout is. When you get to the general election, you probably have a better idea who's coming out. Right now, there's a lot of variables in the factor.
Yeah. All right. Again, if you're looking at polls, and Patrick, I'm sure you'd agree with me, you want to make sure they are reputable polls. All right. We're going to have to leave it there. Patrick, Rob, Marc, thank you.